Sucks to be Messer.
It all comes down to maybe the guy just needs to get laid.
By his cute blonde boyfriend, maybe.
And she's right back. And 15-year-old comes right back with a vengeance.
Welcome to the Macross Delta Recap Show, Episode 8. This is EXO with the magical girl that has the giraffe blues, Celia,
Hello.
and the mecha expert that's a little bit affected by the VAR. Here's Chad.
Hello, everyone.
All right, so Episode 8, Escape Resonance. Let's go with Chad. What's your overall opinion about this week's episode?
Definitely another strong episode for sure. Yeah, it has so much of what Delta has just been building on again and again with every episode. I find it's a winning formula. It's just won me over, and it's working so well in ways that you didn't really expect initially. This one here, they have a lot of concentration on, I guess, the battle between the songs of the two sides of the war that's happening in Delta, and we learn a little bit more about, I guess, how they work. And there's also an ideological battle to a certain extent between the two sides, where they're sort of, I guess, they're each spouting their own propaganda in a way, and or their own point of view, and it's interesting to see how they clash and in what ways. So yeah, I really enjoyed that aspect of it, and of course the mecha action was quite good, very much in the vein of the series so far, and just excellent and fun overall. So I was a big fan.
Yeah, I guess this was the first time that we had kind of like a heads up against the voices, and that was unexpected and interesting.
I thought a lot happened in this episode. I remember getting to the halfway point where the commercial break would typically be and thinking that it was the end, but then it just kept going. And I remember looking at the timestamp and realizing that we were only 10 minutes into the episode. It wasn't done yet. And already there was a lot going on. And it's still giving us a lot of the same information that we have covered before about Windermere and about the effects of the VAR and the Windsinger, but it felt really fresh still. It didn't feel like we were given the same information over and over again. And the sequences within it were really impressive, whether they were more climactic ones at the end or ones closer to the beginning or in the middle. I really liked it overall. It was really good.
Yeah, I think the same thing happened to me now that you mentioned it. I think there was a point where I was thought, oh, no, 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 it can't end yet. It can't end yet. And then it wasn't over yet. But there's a lot of payoffs in this episode, considering Messer and all the other stuff that we've been speculating about. But let's go through the episode. Let's start off with the team of Messer, Kaname, Machina, and Reina that are caught in a firefight against Valdorian troops. Messer gets shot in the arm, but it's just a flesh wound. But then he just starts going through some sort of PTSD.
Yeah, I wasn't exactly sure what to make of it. It looks like he's had some previous serious combat experiences before, and I'm not sure if I'm familiar yet. He was basically seeing flashbacks, and I'm not sure if we've necessarily seen that before because I didn't exactly recognize what it was from or if it was anything that's been talked about as yet. But yeah, there's something seriously affecting him in certain ways. Maybe it's just the nature of this particular battle is the reason we haven't seen it before. I mean, this is a ground battle, basically being fought hand to hand and gun to gun sort of thing. So maybe this is setting something off in Messer, and he's definitely having problems dealing with it. He seems to be more, again, like they've continued this theme in this episode, with Messer being to certain extents more vulnerable to the VAR than the other members of Delta Platoon or Valkyrie. So I'm not sure if we're clear yet on why that is, but it's definitely a recurring theme that's coming up again and again. He seems to work through it enough to actually complete his mission, but I think we're getting ourselves set up for disaster when it comes to Messer. Something big's going to hit for sure.
It's definitely something that we've never seen before, right, Celia? This is new as far as a background on Messer.
Yeah, and it kind of seemed a little sudden too because you're introduced to it after a break with a sequence with Freya and Hayate and Mirage where it shows him shooting and then you get these flashbacks. And Kaname kind of seems to be understanding of what Messer might be going through. She was hesitant when he wanted to move forward anyways. And she's the one who actually brings him back from those images when he's having them. I don't know if he was unconscious or whatever when that happened, but he seemed to be startled from it and it just completely covered in sweat when Kaname brought him back from whatever he was experiencing.
And then at the end of that scene, Mikumo shows up, and then we see Arid and Chuck, who are monitoring the undercover teams in an asteroid field above the planet. And then we cut back to who was in the beginning of the episode: Freya, Mirage, and Hayate. Bogue jumps down and beats up on Hayate for questioning the cause. Mirage throws down a flashbang grenade, but the twins jump down and take her down along with Hayate, who was already hurt. Bogue asks Freya how she could be with these people that she should despise. And then she's kind of
Yeah.
like, it's you guys that should be apologizing to the Windermerians for using their products of labor for the tools of war.
That exchange was awesome. Like, that was really another great way to show Freya's bravery. And, she's really had a lot of self doubts in the past few episodes where she's trying to figure out what she wants to do and what her resolve is in this war. She's facing Bogue and the other knights by herself, unarmed, and she's still questioning them and scolding them, basically. Like, she's telling Bogue and the other knights that it's not right that they're utilizing their people's goods that they worked hard to grow on their planet. And she even says to them, is it really what's best for Windermere? You should apologize to our people.
Yeah.
And I thought that was awesome. That's her spirit. I just love her spirit in this episode.
And she says that, and then Herman just kind of like laughs at Bogue, right?
Yeah, I thought it was great too. There was a line where Bogue calls Freya an immature failure who can't control her rune, says the knight who can't control his own runes. Oh, it was good. I liked that sequence. And you get to find a little bit more about what's going on. The Windermerians are saying, again, what we've been told before, about how they have to take back their planet. And they did mention, though, securing a specific sector. I didn't quite catch the name of it, so it's not in my notes. And that was something that they hadn't talked about in their mission before, but I remember Keith was trying to secure it himself without
Yes,
Roy knowing.
Starwind Sector, I think, is what it's called, and it was mentioned, I think, last episode and maybe even the episode before.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's a nickname for the group of the star cluster that they're in, right?
I think so. Yeah, I think this is like a subsection of the Brasinger cluster that they're basically fighting for, right? So I think this is around Voldor is the Starwind sector, and I'm not exactly sure what the boundaries are, but it's not really important. What's important is that this is their objective here, and that's what they're going for, right? But yeah, like Celia mentioned, there's like a lot of ideological battle going on here, and there's a few moments where I think our heroes are kind of confronted by their own naivete in regards to what's actually happening here. I don't think that Hayate, Freya, and Mirage have clearly understood I think the history of what's going on with Windermere and the other planets. It's not something that they've thought about, whereas the Windermerians clearly, at least the aerial knights have it on their minds. But on the flip side of that, although our heroes might be naive and not understand exactly how things work, it's clear that the aerial knights are fraught with contradictions, and they're saying one thing and doing another completely. Like there's this one point where Hayate and Bogue go at it, and they're just laying into each other verbally, and Hayate just calls Bogue out on his garbage, on his lies. He's like, "You're claiming to be liberating these worlds of the Brasinger cluster while at the same time using mind control to do it. You're no savior. You're no liberator of the people. That much is clear." So it's interesting on both sides how you have these sorts of perspectives, and it's almost Gundam-esque, if I can say that on a Macross show. But no, it's something that's coming through much stronger, and I think it's only going to play a larger part as the series goes on.
But there's also some sort of there could be, we're not sure yet, but there's some sort of propaganda that the Windermerians are acting under, because Quatsum was talking about the apple orchard that his family used to own destroyed by the war.
Yeah, he definitely talks about his personal experiences, or maybe not personal, but his family's experience and what he's lost as far as the war. But you're very right. Like when you mentioned propaganda, that comes out in this episode a lot. Like even at one point, I think Keith enters into the conversation when he's talking with Freya, and he uses the term fatherland as to refer to Windermere. And that's like, it's clear like Nazi associations with that word, for like the World War II and, what Germany was called at the time. So it's like, yeah, I think there's definitely a theme that the aerial knights have been fed a certain line of propaganda. Some of them obviously believe it, but there's elements of it that just you can clearly feel as artificial, that somebody is feeding them this line, which definitely sets up the possibility for some people to sort of come to realizations later on in the series, right? I think that some of the aerial knights might actually have, something to ask or something to question about this whole like Windermerean sort of situation. But we'll have to see how it plays out. For right now, this could just be something that they're setting up for later.
And since Keith seems like he's the most aggressive in actually following through on this propaganda, I feel like he's probably going to be the one who comes to those realizations. I mean, Bogue is pretty violent, but that's just also his temperament, where he's just really aggressive and in your face. But Keith seems to be the one that I see the most who is reiterating the propaganda a lot. And even the way he was talking to Freya when he was talking about burying her on the fatherland, like he was talking to her like he was doing her a favor. Like you're a traitor, but the very least that I could do for you, because you're a Windermerian, is to bury you on our planet. Which, for him to keep spouting the propaganda over and over, I feel like that for him, he's probably going to have the biggest realization later.
Yeah, I think that's true too. Because and Freya, I think to Keith also represents that aspect of it, like the aspect of challenging the propaganda that he's lived so much of his life under. He sees, I think, Freya as a personification of that, and I think that's why he was so eager to get rid of her, because it's
Hmm.
like, I can't have this person breaking apart my argument or making me question my own loyalty to Windermere. It's not allowed. So he'd rather kill her, and then under the guise that he's doing her a favor, rather than confront what she's actually saying.
Hmm. On the flip side, though, he helped spark within Freya wondering what her resolve is to sing, anyways. There was a great moment where Keith and Mikumo were both shown in the same sequence asking Freya the same question. What is your reason for singing? Keith is asking her, why are you singing the songs, of the people you should despise? And Mikumo's asking, what's your reason to be on the stage? But in essence, it's the same question. And now Freya has to ponder it from both sides. Now she's not just hearing it from her mentor, but she's also hearing it from people of her homeworld and people who are trying to kill her for the choices that she has made.
Keith decides to kill Freya, and then Roy jumps down and decides to save her. But he had like a ulterior motive, like he wants to find out more about the Walkir, who just happened to show up. The other team with Mikumo and the rest of Walkir with, and also Messer.
Yeah, well, and when Royd appears too, he clarifies the mission further. The knights were not supposed to kill anybody.
I can't imagine them killing Freya. That would just look so bad, even if they were the enemy. I mean, this is like a intergalactic star that we're talking about.
I think this is just another example too that we're seeing that the knights are not really under Royd's control. Like they're following Keith more than they're following Royd. Royd is telling them, my order was to capture them alive, not to kill them. And even so, Bogue still argues with him and is like, hey, she's a traitor. We have to get rid of her.
Hmm.
To which Royd actually replies, he says, we are not like the new unified government. I
Hmm.
thought that was pretty powerful. Like, whoa. But just another example, because I know they've done this before where they've acted without Royd's consent and they've pushed the boundaries, especially Keith. Keith really likes to operate on his own. He'll go with what Royd's directive is, but for the most part, if he sees an opportunity for what he wants to do, he'll take that before he actually follows through entirely on whatever Royd's mission is for them.
Yeah, and I think that plays in because of, again, the Windermere age limit, right? Royd is the only one with the long-term plan, and they're going by Royd's plan. So really, they have no choice but to follow Royd, but they're always kind of like that impetuous group that just wants to kill everybody.
Yeah.
But then, if they do, what's left of the plan, right?
I think it's going to be a problem for Windermere later, though. I mean, if you can't keep part of your army under control,
Yeah,
your main directive is going to be difficult to fulfill that.
that's right. It's chaos without the head of the snake. So they finally escape the caverns, and then Mulder and Chuck arrive with the Valkyries for the rest of the group, and then the sky battle begins. And then we hear the Windsinger song. Everybody else can hear it, and I think it was Mirage that said, "Is this the song that Hayate was talking about?" Messer reacts to the Var, but then he just keeps fighting with Keith, continuing their personal grudge.
Yeah, this was a really sort of interesting sequence. Just I think in terms of how they described the wind singer, like Heinz, starts his song, and a lot of the characters just they're reacting poorly to it. Messer is clearly having problems, and the animation itself it shows him, experiencing aspects of the VAR. He's got that sort of protruding vein sort of thing going on in his face to a certain extent, not as severe as like a fully affected VAR victim, but still rather serious. And you can tell it's impacting who he is. Keith even mentions at some point that his reaction speed and stuff is off, and he can clearly tell that Messer is not at his full potential, kind of thing. something. But the heaviness, they describe it as like an intense, song. It's so Machina at one point describes the song that Hines is singing, and it's just like the emptiness is so deep or something like that. She says, or it's just so dense or heavy
Ah,
or just
so sharp it
oppressive.
hurts.
Yeah, so sharp it hurts and whatnot. So it's like a very, very, impactful sort of song. When Valkyrie sort of get going, they try to do their best to counter it, to do what they do and undo the problems of the VAR syndrome as best they can. And they have some sort of effect, but it looks like it's mostly holding their own rather than taking an advantage. But we find out later when I think when the battle progresses, we have what was that? It was like an ace pilot.
Oh, Larazabal.
Larazabal, yeah, Alberto Larazabal, that's right, yes. He sort of appears as one of the forces that they're fighting and gives Hayate a real run for his money. And Hayate's having a complex reaction, I think, in that he's been doing his thing like he has this episode already, in which he is trying to disable as many of his enemies as he can without killing them, even though he was specifically told by Messer not to. But Hayate has decided to go ahead and do it anyway. And when Alberto appears, Hayate is really torn because he actually met Larazabal's children in the earlier episode 7. And so he is strongly motivated to find some way to defeat him without actually killing him or causing this turmoil which would destroy his family. And at that point, it's Freya actually who just takes a central role and just decides that she's going to do something about it. And she's going to try and, use her singing to save Alberto. And at that point, it just sort of just takes off from there. And it's her singing that all of a sudden like turns the tide, both in the battle between Hayate and Alberto and also the battle between the wind singers. And I think at some point, doesn't someone mention that they start referring to Freya as a wind singer or something like that, or they at least recognize her song as like the song of the wind or something, and it's like as a serious like counteracting effect on Hines's singing and just undoes the VAR syndrome and all the people that are around them, which
Yeah,
was a
Royd
really
takes
impressive
notice of
sequence.
that.
Yeah,
Royd's excited.
yeah,
I mean, he's really interested in what's going on with Freya.
yeah.
Um,
That whole sequence was so good though. It was the most
yeah,
Macross of all Macross scenes
it really
ever.
Right, right. Yeah, I was thinking the exact same thing. I was like, "Oh my God, this is just, this is classic Macross going on right here." It just has all the elements of it and just everything's working in just the right proportions. I was really blown away by it.
It was so good. I felt Minmay and Basara and Cheryl and Ronka like literally all in that moment. It didn't remind me of any one series in particular. It was just Macross, like that scene. I think of all the scenes that you could pick from Delta, to if someone asked you like what makes Macross a series and you had to choose from Delta, I would
Mhm.
definitely pick that sequence and be like, here, this is Macross. It's very defining.
You're pretty proud of Freya, huh,
Oh,
Celia?
she was so brave. She was
Yeah,
so
she
brave.
was.
It meant a lot to her, especially because Larazabal's children were doubting the power of music. And then in this one where Keith is telling her that the songs that she sings are only illusions, where she believes in herself and her strength in order to try and save Larazabal instead of risking him dying and leaving his family behind. And that's incredible. Like I loved it. I have no words. I can't say exactly what I want to say for it, but I loved it so much.
I got two words: giraffes blues. What a great song.
It's
Ah,
definitely intense. It was very
Yeah,
intense. Yeah. I think we keep sounding like a broken record here because of just the strength of the show. But I find that there are more and more of those just pure Macross moments each episode that goes on in Delta. And I'm like, no one is more shocked than I to have to say something like that because I was just not on board with this show at all. But these episodes just keep hitting you with both classic Macross moments and at the same time, just all new Macross, right? And it's just done so well. I guess define expectations, I think, is the biggest thing. I think that's the thing that keeps blowing me away. It's just like I'm expecting the show to fall apart at any minute, and it's just like 8 episodes in, and it's just striking all the chords that it needs to, and just like firing on all cylinders every time. And we get these moments like this with Hayate just doing his thing where he's like defending Freya and fighting, and there's Valkyrie combat that's just incredibly well animated and so exciting and just emotionally charged. And then you have the music that joins along with it. And I mean, here in something like Macross Delta, we have two characters, Freya and Hayate, who have a much more, I guess you could say, metaphysical or very like intertwined sort of relationship through the music, which wasn't necessarily the case in all of the different Macross iterations. Yeah, it made for one of the most exciting sequences in the series so far, and that's saying a lot given how much we've had in this series to date.
Yeah. We even had protoculture ruins.
Yep.
Yeah.
We had our Valkyrie, we had our singer, and we had the protoculture all in the same sequence. Like it was so good.
Yeah, and we got Messer finally like definitely affected by the VAR,
Oh, poor
and that's something that
Messer.
we've been talking about in the beginning. And I thought they were gonna stretch it out.
Now, the poor guy is clearly struggling. There's something bad going on with him.
I mean, between the traumatic flashback and his almost complete case of the VAR, it's not looking
Yeah.
good for Messer in this episode. And he's stressed because of war and keeping his
hmm
squadron alive.
I'm wondering if that guy that wrote in that last time, I think it's Sean Salisbury, I'm not sure, that maybe he's onto something when he said that people that are more violent prone fall for the VAR faster, or even though like he was in the cave listening to Walk Here just like 5 minutes ago, right?
I'm not sure what the connection is yet entirely. I mean, we know that
Yeah.
there is a physical connection for sure between the water supply, the food supply, all that sort of thing. That's one of the aspects that they're using to help spread the VAR. But there might be some sort of other character aspect to
Yeah.
Messer as well, like the listener that wrote in. It could be that. I think at one point in one of the earlier episodes, I also speculated that it could be culture related,
hmm
because Messer seems to exclude himself so much from the culture of his own social groups and social circles. He's almost like antisocial in many sort of aspects, and that might leave him more vulnerable to the VAR than some of the other characters. But I don't think it's been established yet exactly what's going on with Messer.
Yeah, there's definitely something special with his case as far as the VAR.
And it makes it dangerous too because Messer is like their ace pilot, which kind of leaves the fate of some of the other characters up in the air because you're like, what happens if the VAR affects him and he's like the best pilot that the
And he's
Delta Squad
behind the
has?
yeah.
He could cause some serious damage.
Battling Keith. Keith tries to activate it all the way with him. When they initially meet and Keith tells him, I will face you in the sky, like they finally see each other
Yeah,
face to
that was
face.
awesome.
That was a great moment and total Fujoshi fodder. Total Fujoshi fodder. Because they finally see each other face to face. They haven't seen each other in person before. And just like Messer, of course, is like, oh, damn, there's this guy here with a sword. What do I do? I got my gun. And
He's got a gun.
and
What's he
and
worried
Keith,
about a guy with a sword?
oh god, and then Keith is all like, "Ah, you must be the Shinigami. You felt my wind." And I'm like, "Okay." This was put here for the Fujoshi. But and then he tells him, I'll face you in the sky." And when he has that moment where he realizes that Messer is infected, he tries to activate this device that I don't know entirely what it does. I assumed it's to activate the VAR further and to actually make him go berserk, but it's a
Mhm.
weird wave thing that even like makes Keith kind of cringe when he uses it, and it affects Freya also. I think it's a disruptor of the fold waves or something. But he tries to use it on Messer and then it's interrupted, so it doesn't actually activate it all the way, and Messer continues to fight back the infection.
Yeah, that's pretty much it for the sky battle, right? And then with their mission being complete, they go back to the what's the name of the ship, Chad?
The Aether.
The Aether. I was gonna say Elysium, but that
That's the big one. This is
the
just
Macross
yeah.
has to take off one of these days and just transform. When is that gonna be?
I don't
That's the
know,
one
but
thing.
I've seen the leaked pictures of the new model of the cruiser mode of the Elysian, and I am in love.
It's
It
awesome.
looks
Yeah.
great. It is kind of strange, actually, how we've seen like the attack configuration in the show as a CG animated model, but we haven't seen the cruiser configuration in one. And then here we have the cruiser configuration showed in like plastic models that are going to be sold, but we don't see the attack configuration. It's weird how they're doing that. I'm kind of surprised.
I want to know where my Valkyria toys are.
What do you mean?
My Valkyria figures.
Oh yeah, you
They've
would
been
think that they
showing
would be.
them.
Yeah, that would be a priority. You would think for him.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the only one who has one right now, I think Freya has a zero Figure Arts statue
Hmm.
that's up for pre-order. And they
Yeah.
showed, I can't remember which,
Kumo and
yeah,
Mirage.
I can't remember which exhibition it was at, but they showed Mikumo in her uniform and then Mirage unpainted. So it was just the sculpt. And even then, that's not probably not going to be final. And they had another one of Freya in her uniform also. But the only thing I've seen for Valkyrie are the rubber trading straps, I should say, and the acrylic standees that have the light up bases.
Have you seen the Keith figure with the flight suit and helmet?
Yes,
Very
he
nice.
looks cool. I might have to get that.
You will get
I will
that.
get that.
We'll get you a Messer one to put next to him.
Yes. What's worse is this episode made me Bogue trash. Like, I didn't really care for Bogue when he first showed up, but the more that he's becoming a player in the story, I kind of like him. So as soon as a figure shows up of Bogue, it's probably going to go in my pre-order cart.
I like Bogue, but when he got shot down by Hayate, that was such an awesome moment. I was like, yes, because it was Bogue's face that just sold it, right?
Yeah.
And it's great. I love his expressions.
Yeah.
They're not holding back with expressions in this show, and I think that's what makes it really great also is like
Uh-huh.
every character kind of feels like their own, instead of having same face same model type of thing where you're recycling a lot of stuff to account for
Yeah.
time and or budget. I
Yeah.
don't really feel that with this show.
I
No.
love the character animation in this show. I am really taken with it. I just think it's so much more interesting and expressive, and I think it also helps that the character work on Macross Delta is so strong as well. Like it really gets you in, and then the animation and just supporting it so well. I feel like if there is bad pieces of animation, it's just not done in any sequence where I'm really invested in anything. It's always something that's on, it's something that's not too important, but every sort of moment that really matters to me, at least as an audience member who's invested in the characters, the animation is always there to hold up its end. It's part of the visual presentation of the story, and it never falters. I'm really pleased with it so far.
And we're not even done with the episode yet. Celia, Mikumo, and Freya finally have their heart to heart. A good heart to heart.
Yeah, that was a really good sequence when Mikomo and Freya finally come to a mutual understanding, and Freya finds her resolve for what she wants to do in the war and why she wants to sing. And she decides that she wants to sing to reach as many people as possible and to make them happy because music makes her happy also. And I thought that was really great. Mikomo's been pushing her to find that resolve and find her reason. And Freya came to it on her own. And the look on Mikomo's face, just she's glowing with pride when Freya tells her why she wants to sing. It's great.
It is good, yeah.
Now we need a scene with Messer.
We do get some sort of scene. I think it's like a post scene, and it's just like we have Hayate and Mirage sort of stumbling upon Messer, and he is having like a full on like VAR like breakout.
Oh,
So it
Messer,
looks like,
no.
yeah, this was a rougher episode for Messer than we thought, I think.
Oh man, nothing's going right for him. He gets
Just
shot in the
remember, I have
arm.
him as #1 on my Deadpool.
No.
Oh no.
No, he
And
can't
that's one that
die.
I wasn't even expecting to come in.
Uh,
It's just not been a good day for him. His
Yeah.
infiltration mission is busted. He gets shot in the arm. He has a traumatic flashback. He's infected with the VAR and he can't fight it off quite as easily this time.
And that's it. That's the end of the episode.
Yeah. Oh, man. It was so good. Oh, I do have a question, though. Does anyone else get rescue arc vibes from Royd?
Rescue Arc vibes?
Yeah, I get this vibe that there might be a rescue arc in our future in trying to rescue Freya, maybe. I mean, her voice reached Windermere, and with the help of the Protocols of Ruins, but she resonated so strongly with it that even the sickly king could hear her and recognized her song on the wind.
Oh, that's right.
So I'm getting vibes, man.
And then her schematics were off the charts, and then
Hmm.
Hayate and her were in sync. There's a lot of things that they were showing about the resonance.
Yeah, yeah. So I feel like because of that, maybe it's just because I have seen too much. So I'm predicting based off of other patterns from other shows. But I have this feeling that Royd is going to try to utilize that because it's exactly what he wants. I mean, Heinz can resonate with the ruins, but his health can only let him last so long,
Hmm.
before he gets weak or before he pushes himself too hard and he can't sing anymore. Freya, on the other hand, is pretty healthy and her voice is just as strong, if not stronger, than Heinz's.
Yeah.
So I could see a rescue arc happening where the gang has to try to get Freya back.
Actually, Marion Nell said something today. She said that Bogue is becoming more and more like the Landau Albatu from
Delandau,
Escaflowne.
yeah, from Vision of Escaflowne, yeah.
Do you see that about Bogue?
Yes, there is definitely. I'm surprised actually that this hasn't come up more often because there's a lot of crossover between Vision of Escaflowne and Macross fans, and I'm
I think you
surprised.
mentioned it before.
I don't know if I mentioned specifically that Delandau and Bogue are sort of
Not
like
Delando,
exact,
but
like very
Escaflowne.
similar characters, but I did mention, yeah, the Escaflowne connection for sure. But I was waiting for someone to kind of come up and say, Bogue reminds me a lot of Delandau, sort of thing. I think Bogue is a little. I think he's a little bit more stable. And that sounds kind of funny when you're talking about Bogue, but he does come across as more sane, I guess you could say, than someone like Delandau, who was, clearly like unhinged and like mentally insane to a certain extent. And there was a reason for it, but it's yeah, there's definitely that same sort of element. It's the character who just like gets the visceral thrill off of the violence in which they inflict, and it's just like always the one that's charging in there to sort of like take everybody out and just prove that they're just one of the best warriors around, kind of thing.
Since we're talking about Marianne's message, do you guys want to read out the other messages?
Sure.
So, all right, I'll read the first one. It's from Sean Salisbury. He's just trying to explain that the pill inside the bottle last week is actually the sensor that they used to analyze the water. So that wasn't an actual thing to promote the VAR syndrome.
Yeah, I thought they were drugging the water.
That's what I thought too.
Yeah. It sounds like it has natural elements in it that's responding with the apples.
Okay, yeah, kind of makes sense.
I have some tweets from Sean also from today
Okay,
with regard to the current episode
go for it.
that we could do.
That'd be cool.
Yeah. Why don't we finish the Facebook ones and then we'll go to the Twitter ones?
Something current. Okay, this one's an anti Mikumo.
Oh no.
I'm really starting to hate Mikumo. I know everyone thinks of her as a parallel to Messer because she wants to give Freya a baptism of fire, but she really comes off as a bitch all the time. At least they humanized Messer and understand him and what he's trying to do. But with Mikumo, they just bat an eye every time because she is the mysterious Venus, quote unquote, who is actually only mysterious because the show tells you that she is. I mean, Windermere was shrouded in mystery too, but it was actually interesting. I think they do need to pay off Mikumo pretty soon.
Yeah, I would tend to agree actually. I think Makumo's character design and I guess the fans of her I think are carrying a lot for her, because just based on a character development standpoint, there hasn't really been much interesting going on with Makumo. I mean, she sort of does some interesting things plot wise. They put her in different positions where it's like, okay, what's going on here or what's happening? But as a character, yeah, she's quite the cipher, and we're just not getting that sort of development from her. We don't spend enough time with her to figure out what exactly is going on. So I can see how some people be like, "Well, I'm supposed to be like impressed by this character, but really, there's not much there." So I think it's a legitimate criticism, from my perspective, anyway. But I
Hmm.
don't know how everybody else feels.
Yeah, well, and we weren't really given much to be curious about until recent episodes where she goes to the protoculture ruins and the episode
Hmm.
where she's singing Heinz's song to herself and she's like, "Oh, it's stuck in my head." Just little things, but oh
Hmm.
no. Watch out, everyone.
Yeah, I don't think
Watch
that's the
Chad
kind
become
of
infected.
I don't think my voice is gonna do anything to anybody unless just cringe.
But yeah, because of that, I think that's what we're starting to get is that she clearly has a deeper power, but it's not something the creators are willing to reveal anytime soon. And they're not really playing it up that much either. Like they're just kind of like showing it to us and
Yeah.
then moving on and not touching on it again until at least 2 or 3 episodes later. There's some pretty big gaps between these.
She's the one that mentions it too. She's like, I'm the mysterious Venus.
Yeah, that's great that she calls herself that.
I gotta give it to the show though. Every reveal has been pretty good. So kind
Yeah.
of like forward to see where that leads, and hopefully it's just as good as everything else.
Yeah. The comment continues also where he thinks that going to the ruins makes me think that she has some deeper genetical connection to the protoculture that allows her to produce fold waves within her body.
Oh, did you guys see this? I think it's a tweet that then like everybody was spreading around to the different Macross
Oh, the
pages.
bird human tweet.
Yeah, you saw
Yeah,
that?
I saw that one. That was cool.
Um, as far as the bird human, and maybe like Chad has more information on this, is that an actual thing or is that just a something that the Mayans thought that they saw? And I feel like from Macross Zero, it seems like something that they misinterpreted to be maybe it was like an ancient Mecca or something, but it wasn't actually a race.
Yeah, if I'm remembering Zero correctly, and it's been some time. It wasn't exactly a
And
race.
we talk about Zero every week.
um, but yeah, it's not an actual species. I don't think it was in Macross Zero. It was called the AFOS,
Hmm.
AFOS. It was a protoculture system. It wasn't an actual species. I guess because of the Mayans and stuff like that. I think it was like described as the bird human incident because it was like
Hmm.
a humanoid creature in the I guess in the likeness of the semi likeness of a bird or something. So I think that's where that comes from, but it's not necessarily a species as far as I understand.
So no one can say Mikumo is bird human because there's no such thing.
If there is such, I think it just refers to the protoculture people and their
Yeah.
particular like whatever they use to manifest themselves and stuff like that. It's not necessarily the bird human could also be like an analogy for a Valkyrie, right?
Yeah, that's what I
And
was thinking
the
too.
technology that the protoculture utilizes, which to people like the Mayans, it would be like looking at a human that is also a bird who can also fly and has magical powers and all the rest of that stuff. And the religion that's been built up around it, sort of thing. So I think it's more symbolic than it is anything else. Probably supposed to be a combination of many different things and many different like either people or technologies or objects.
Cool. Celia, do you want to go back to Sean Salisbury and his tweets?
Yeah, so Sean actually tweeted at me today before I had seen the subs, so I didn't have an answer for him then. But he tweeted at me today some comments on the current episode that we were discussing. He says, one thing that has me thinking is what does Mulders mean by his line, he would be proud if he could see you now.
Oh yeah, that's right. I wanted to ask that. Good question, Sean.
Yeah, he was asking me like what I thought about that. I'm not so sure. As far as we know about Hayate, he hops from planet to planet, and that's about it. That he's a wanderer and he doesn't really stay in some place for too long. We don't get a lot of backstory about him, but it sounds like Arad is a little bit more keen to what Hayate's coming from than even
Hmm.
Hayate might be, or at least that's what the audience's impression is, and that's what the creators are willing to let on.
Huh.
I wonder if the necklace is like an heirloom. You know how like Cheryl has her family has the earrings?
Yeah.
I wonder if the necklace is something that's been passed down in Hayate's family.
So I was gonna ask, like, how would Messer knows if he's related to somebody that he knew before? But that's a good point.
Yeah. And actually, Sean has his own idea for that also that he tweeted at me. He says, I'm thinking maybe Hayate's family was in the UN Spacey and died because of it, hence why he hates killing and he's a pacifist.
Hmm. I mean, that could be possible, but the bigger question would be, like, how does Messer know Hayate?
Oh, Arad Mulders.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
God, why do I keep getting the names
There are
wrong?
too many M's in this show.
Molders. How does
Machina,
Mulder know?
Mulders, Messer, Mikumo.
Lady M.
Lady M,
Mikumo.
Mirage. We have too many M's, guys. Mikaru
Mer-
Michijo.
Mercat.
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 But that's what I'm wondering. With regards to Mulder's recognizing Hayate, maybe he doesn't recognize Hayate, but he recognizes the necklace.
Yeah,
It's pretty
could be.
distinct.
Cool. Is that it?
That's it.
All right, let's close it out. Celia, where can we find you when you're not on the Macross Delta recap show?
You can find me on facebook.com/Celia Rose Cosplay and on Twitter at Planets Twinkle.
And Chad?
You can contact me at my email address, which is marchingcw@hotmail.com. You can visit the Macross Mecha Manual, and you can visit me on Facebook as well at facebook.com/Macross Mecha Manual. And I can also be found on various anime message boards, such as Anime Nation, Anime Network News, and Macross World forums.
Cool. I'm going to find you in all those places.
Get around.
This is EXO. You could find me on the Macross World Facebook page or the Macross Delta Facebook page, or you could tweet at me at Macross Tweet, the official Macross World Twitter account. And that's it. See you next week with episode 9. It's Uncontrolled on the Edge, episode 9. See ya.
Bye.
Goodbye.